Oh,
Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of Coach's Corner with Ethan and Justin. I'm Justin Scholar, joined by my co-host,
Ethan Wolf.
So, Ethan, today we're going to be talking about cardio.
Yeah.
Cardiovascular activity.
Why do
Cardio? Yeah, like why do cardio?
What's it about? What's the deal?
What are the benefits of it? Is it good for fat loss? Is it good for just general health? Like what is this thing, this like catch-all phrase, and how do we apply it to our life?
Yeah.
And how do we pick the right modality for our goals?
And just, to make it happen at least.
Make it happen.
Yeah.
So what we're going to try to do, I think, is just define terms.
Yeah, I think that's important of like, what does cardio actually include as an activity? What are the many forms? Maybe bring out some official definitions, but have an understanding of that because I think the word is thrown around and,
Right.
it can mean a lot of different things. Is it cardio by a textbook definition standard or is it the common Western culture of cardio?
Cardiovascular health, I think, is essentially
Yeah.
it, right? And, I think that there's some concrete data on some baseline metrics that studies over 15 years with hundreds of thousands of people show, improved health markers, longer life, less risk of disease. And so there's definitely some like concrete science around just cardiovascular health in general and what it does for your brain and your body.
Yes.
But then it kind of starts to go into, okay, well, there's different modalities. There's steady state cardio, fasted cardio, interval training, technically like walking is cardio.
It is.
Right?
Before the episode, we were kind of talking, and I was like, I don't know if that falls into it, but it does.
It does.
It does, right? And so one of the definitions I found, without being too sciencey, that I thought was cardiovascular fitness is defined by your capacity to exert yourself.
Your capacity to exert yourself. Yeah, that's really interesting.
It's a kind of nice, broad,
Yeah.
common language thing. I'm just like, how are you able to exert?
Which is why walking can be considered cardio because one person's, suicide drills in basketball camp is another person's walking around the block.
Yeah,
So
an hour of walk to some people is nothing. Like, I walked an hour easy. I know sometimes I walk an hour and I'm like, whoo.
Yeah.
It can get me. So it's there's relativity in there as well. So
Do you do cardio, Ethan?
the shadow, the shade. Gosh, where'd the sun go?
Shade. It's all well lit.
No, I don't. Okay, so I engage in recreational behaviors, like I do a flow art, which is participating with a prop. So that definitely falls under cardio. I do try to take conscious effort walks, but I don't like run or row. I would say that in my definition as a fitness professional and what I define as cardio in my mind, I don't think I do cardio personally. And there's the caveat of I do think walking and me playing with the dragon staff is elevating my heart rate and having benefit. But I know that if I even jog or get on a rower or play a recreational sport, that little jump in intensity that might be sustainable for multiple miles or 20 minutes, 30 minutes, like let's say a jog, is still much more difficult than the walking. And I'm like, oh, wow. I don't have this polished here.
Right.
So I understand that walking could be considered cardio, but I think for me as a fitness professional that lives in a world of exercise, I personally look at it as something a little more intense than walking, even if that on a textbook standard is met.
And I think walking is cardio by definition, meaning that like, okay, well, what is cardiovascular health?
Yeah.
It kind of goes into this VO2 max topic, which is essentially your body's ability to process oxygen through your blood, through your muscles, and then use that oxygen as energy, which, not to get too sciencey, which is essentially your oxidative pathway. And so by definition, walking is sort of it is utilizing the oxidative pathway.
Yeah. Okay. So this is
So
good.
it's cardio.
Yeah. So I want to talk about this. Let's get a little sciencey.
Ooh.
Right. So cardio is technically aerobic exercise would I think be the more scientifically accurate term, right?
Because aerobic and anaerobic.
Or non-aerobic, exactly. And so vascular, like our vascular system is our veins and our arteries, right? It's what carries our blood around. The cardiovascular system involves the lungs and the heart and the whole system of intaking air, which has oxygen, obviously, and pumping that oxygen via our blood throughout our body for staying alive and energy and all that good stuff. So that's like the cardiovascular system. And aerobic exercise, to your point, is exercise that uses the aerobic pathway or oxygen and fat as an energy source. Not that oxygen is used, but it's that oxygen and oxygenated blood is flowing more freely. And then in that low level state, fat is the primary fuel source. And those are kind of like the defining factors.
And by the way, we can even take it even further. Right now, we are utilizing our oxidative pathway.
Oh, absolutely. It's happening all the time.
Yes.
All systems, there's three primary systems, right? You have the oxidative or the aerobic pathway, which is low level intensity. And then you got like your glycolytic and using starches from glycogen in our muscles. It's kind of like doing a set of push-ups. And then you got your ATP PC phase, which is like just super readily available energy.
Explosive.
For like if you had to like jump as high as you could for just 1 second. All systems are happening all at once. It's not like, I remember in school that was a big thing. I was like, oh, it's this or this. And it's like, no, it's this constant dance between them all. But fundamentally, if you go for an hour walk, you're going to be in an aerobic state, right?
Yeah.
And, I think that's one of the definitions of it is that it's a workout that increases your heart rate and your breathing rate, but not so much that you feel like you need to stop and take a break. It's basically a sustainable activity.
Which brings us to the different sort of utilizations of these energy pathways, where if we go with cardio in the more traditional sense, imagining walking on an incline on a treadmill or doing a light jog or cycling, you feel your heart rate up, but to Ethan's point, it's sustainable.
Yeah.
Right? Where once we go into exercises that are unsustainable, like imagine a circuit training, there's only so many squats and push-ups a person can do in a circuit before they just... That's unsustainable. That's kind of more of like our glycolytic pathway. Right? Yeah. So now the irony is, and that when we think of like cardio as like an umbrella term, all of it is cardiovascular health, right? It's all considered, to your point, it's all kind of this like, ebb and flow of all three pathways simultaneously. We might be using one more dominantly than the other, depending on the modality of our cardio. But essentially, cardio is really anything that gets you breathy.
Yeah, and I think it is important to recognize like a heavy set of squats, your heart rate's going to go up, right? When your heart rate's going up, your heart is pumping more blood per stroke or per pump. That's stretching your arteries out each heartbeat more, which is asking your arteries to be stronger and be more responsive, right? So there's adaptations that happen anytime your heart rate's elevated.
Right.
And those definitely are going on for, say, in a set of squats. Your heart rate's going to go up. There's going to be an adaptive response to that. But I think the thing that is going to be the defining difference between like, oh, well, squats are good for my cardiovascular system is that we're talking about oxygen. The adaptations that happen from cardiovascular training, there's acute and chronic adaptations, meaning things that happen immediately. Like your alveoli start to expand. If you just start doing cardio, it's an adaptation. Right there and then your lungs go, open up.
Yep.
But like chronic, meaning long-term adaptations are like higher stroke volume, meaning your heart pumps more blood per beat with chronic,
it's just more
efficient. Yeah, basically it's like all the things that are kind of common sense. Your lungs are more efficient at taking and absorbing oxygen and getting it into the blood. Your venous system is more efficient at returning the blood back to your heart and that kind of a thing. And so I think the thing that really defines it is like, no doubt a set of squats will elevate your heart rate, maybe make the muscle strong because it's pumping hard, but we're not necessarily increasing, I think, the efficiency of oxygen utilization and oxygen delivery to the tissues of the body.
Hence, a little bit more of like either intentional duration.
Yes.
And, creating just a little bit more of a stressor on your body that there is that adaptation to, where if we just did a single set and then a rest, yes, on some scale,
somewhere in there,
but there's so much recoverable space in between that the adaptation from a cardiovascular standpoint is going to be kind of limited.
Yeah.
So
there's things to consider and all that. So I think we've defined cardio.
Yes,
we got it in there, right?
So
In a certain sense, that's what's going on. But, we don't want to get too down the rabbit hole there. But
let's talk about what generally people think is necessary for their particular goals. And I one of the biggest things, especially with sort of like the general population, is when they think fat loss.
I was going to say, can we do the elephant in the room?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think?
Elephant.
Do you think cardio is necessary for fat loss, or is it a quality tool to achieve fat loss as a primary goal?
Right. So quiz for you listeners. Is cardio, in your mind, yes or no, necessary for fat loss?
Yep.
Do. And the answer is
No.
no, it's not necessary
Negative.
for fat loss. Being in a calorie deficit is necessary for fat loss. And the way my mentor would say it to me is exercise in general, including cardio, is good for heart health,
Yes.
brain health, cardiovascular health,
Mood, depression, all the good stuff.
general well-being,
Libido.
strength,
Yeah.
but it's not for fat loss. In fact, too much exercise, especially cardio, can be a hindrance to fat loss.
Why is that?
Can you guys imagine why doing too much cardio could actually backfire with your fat loss goals? Well, the answer is that if you've ever done any sort of arduous training, imagine like a half marathon or a obstacle course or a boot camp class,
Tough Mudder, that kind of thing, yeah.
You're starving.
Yeah.
And those hunger signals might be really difficult to overcome if you've already been in a calorie deficit and then you add extreme cardio on top of that. Managing those emotions really and those signals can be very difficult and lead to people breaking their diets, over consuming, and then just chasing the dragon by trying to think that, well, maybe I just need to add more cardio in because I'm doing 5 boot camps a week, but I'm not losing any weight, so maybe I need to do 6.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Well, it just goes, it goes back to calorie restriction, or utilizing more calories than you intake is how we change our composition for fat loss, at least. And that you can't, let's just touch on it, you can't out-train a bad diet.
Can't out-train a bad diet.
Because an hour of cardiovascular exercise, let's just be generous with a 300 to 500 calorie expenditure. 500 on a very generous.
If you're a big dude, you probably
doing a sport.
500 calories. If
in
you're
an
like a
hour,
normal
but
size
we all
person,
know like a donut could easily be
there's your 500 calories
in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's the overall there without getting too much into food. But that's just, you just can't out-train a bad diet.
Right. So I think that's just a really important, before we break it off, I just think that that's a really important point to drive home, is that we're not doing this stuff because we're thinking that it's going to aid in our fat loss. Sure, there's a little, marginal benefit.
I got a little devil's advocate to play on the end of that in a second.
But fundamentally,
look
at it from the nutrition standpoint. But now, as far as why we want to do cardio, it's for other things.
It's vitality.
It's vitality. And a really interesting study of over 15 years, 120,000 people, so decent sample size, over 15 years, people who got their VO2 max in like the green zone, not elite, not excellent, but just like out of the yellow and like into the green good zone. Like, okay, you are healthy. Had a 96% survival rate over the next 10-year period. So what does that mean? So let's say you're 50 years old and you get your VO2 max, which is your body's ability to process oxygen through your blood and muscles.
Just to make it clear, VO2 max is a test, is like the fundamental cornerstone test of your cardiovascular health. There's a couple different ways to do it, but it's kind of the scientific equation-based number that would basically be the thing to say, here is your cardiovascular level.
This is what you were saying earlier. There is some actual concrete data. It's not nebulous in the sense that, I heard it's good, we should just do it. Why? I don't know. No, there's actually like concrete, very, very solid data.
But VO2 max is the test to
but
measure
VO2
that.
max
That's
and
the
just
thing.
kind of understanding where you
heard
are.
Of it before.
Yeah, on that spectrum, and you guys can Google it. It's pretty easy to get tons of information on this. Like everybody talks about it, but that is sort of the baseline that we want to use to measure just general health and well-being, all the benefits that one might receive from having their cardiovascular shape in a good shape. Anyway, so this study, 120,000 people over a 15-year period, and they did follow-ups. And let's say you're a 50-year-old person. Your survival rate over the next 10 years is almost guaranteed, barring you get smashed by a car or you fall off a building. But like anything that like metabolically might kill you prematurely is
cancers, metabolic diseases.
You're essentially you're putting that into a 3% margin that's going to happen.
That's pretty huge.
Huge.
I mean, that's crazy.
Versus the same same size cohort of people who didn't do it. Now your survival rate over the same 10-year period is only 77%.
Oh wow!
So
20% difference.
If you're a 50-year-old person and your cardiovascular condition is terrible, you have a 77% chance you're going to make it the next 10 years. So you're probably going to make
97.
it versus 97%.
That's a very big change in odds there.
Huge.
I mean, any gambler would be like, I'll bet on that, right?
And that's nothing else considered except simply getting your VO2 max in the green zone for your age.
I'm assuming green zone is just what is considered
good. Like green zone, like
here's
bad,
here's the good range.
Excellent. We don't need to be excellent or elite, but just solid.
Yeah, just
in a good place.
Showing up.
So that's some pretty concrete science, if you ask me, on why you'd want to at least, at the very least, sort of like get outside for those walks, do a little jog, do a sport of some kind, whatever
run
it is.
And chase your dog with fetch. Play there's all these accessible paths.
So maybe we should talk a little bit about, intention and sort of desired outcome and sport specificity around cardio and who, it might be good for and, some options for people.
Right. So, so fundamentally it's good. It does all the things. It's everything good.
You can't deny the benefits of it.
Lower cholesterol, and
less chance of dementia and any sort of degenerative disease like Alzheimer's.
Reducing type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, everything, increased body image. Everything good comes from just exercise in general, I think, and also cardiovascular health. Improves the immune system, lowers your blood pressure, just all the things. The old ticker's getting better.
So the big takeaway is definitely do it.
Something is, and to your point when you asked me if I do it, I don't. And it's like, I think researching this was put a little fire under my ass.
Totally. Me too.
Maybe just even spin my dragon staff more. Like, I love spinning my staff. It's a recreational activity for me. It's like a little form of movement art. That doesn't necessarily mean I have to go out and jog, although I think I'm going to start or hit the rower, but at least look at it as I get two birds with one stone, and maybe instead of scrolling through Facebook for 20 minutes, I'll go pick up my staff instead and just make one more better decision that week.
Definitely.
It's going to fulfill me in more ways than one.
Yeah, same with me. And in fact, what was interesting and what I thought would be fun for a future episode is we could actually do the 12-minute run test.
Oh, wow. That would be fun.
Because I played volleyball for like 9 months straight every week, and that definitely like improved my cardio conditioning in that modality. I don't know if that would translate to just like a straight flat surface jog.
It definitely would.
It won't hurt it.
I haven't done a VO2 max test in over 10 years. Keep it real. And so it would be interesting and fun to actually. We'd have to go like an LA Fitness. Basically,
or just a
treadmill or a track.
Just any flat surface.
Yeah.
So the idea.
I guess we have the track.
So one of the ways to test your VO2 max is just the 12-minute run test. And so the 12-minute run test is essentially how far can you get in 12 minutes, right? And so let me pull up this article that kind of breaks it all down.
Meaning, like, if you're willing to hit that gas.
Yeah. So according to this article here, which is just basically a screen grab of where you'd want to be depending on your age and height and gender. So there's different ways to test your VO2 max. There's like the walking test. So like if you're like in really bad shape, running is just not even an option. But there's like a walking test where you just walk 1 mile and then check your heart rate. And then there's like an online calculator where you just enter your age, your gender, your weight, and then what your heart rate was after that mile. And then that pretty much spits out an idea.
Your VO2 max.
The best way that I'm reading is this 12-minute run. And so the idea is here for men, so we're both 39 years old, to be considered good in the 12-minute run test, we'd want to basically be able to get 1.5 miles. So 1.4 to 1.57 is the good range for men of our age to land.
That's like an 8-minute mile.
It's an 8-minute mile. So that's like a hearty
That's a good
jog.
hustle. That's definitely.
But there's a big difference between like a 8-minute mile and then another 4 minutes after that.
That's what I'm saying. It's a little more than a jog. I think my jog is like 6 miles an hour.
No, 8 mile an hour pace is solid.
That's like a run. I would call that a run. It might not be a sprint, but that's running in my book.
So I think that
running.
For sure. That would be tough. It'd be fun. I think that one of these future episodes we'll
have to do a little addendum.
This.
We'll have to come back. Okay, well let's do this. Cardio is really great. Good for your heart, libido, weight loss, stress, depression. Yay! What are the cons? What are the hurdles? So this is kind of how I'm looking at it. What are the hurdles, or what are the things that are challenging about cardio, in your opinion? And then maybe keeping those things in mind, how can we make cardio accessible, or like what are the ways that we could consider bringing it into our life, or what are the kind of like the shiny practical component, kind of flip it.
I think the hard thing is just the enjoyability of it.
Yeah.
It sucks.
It's
like
boring. If it's not a sport, it's fucking boring.
It's boring. Like it's monotonous, especially if you're just like running on a treadmill or like rowing or riding a bike. Like
if you're not outside,
you're literally just doing something for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and the entire time just thinking about how miserable you are.
Yeah, because it's physically uncomfortable most of the time.
Yes.
Let's keep that real. So it's this prolonged, non-stop, consistent, physically uncomfortable state. And to your point, if it's anything indoors, a stationary bike, a treadmill, or a rower, you're kind of just in this monotonous indoor, no breeze on your face. And we can talk about the contrast of maybe doing things outdoors later, but it's just, that's not very fun, fundamentally.
So that's probably one of the big cons. I also think a con too is just sort of like probably more of the expectation of what it's going to be doing for you. And like people, I think, quit because they go into it, like we were talking about earlier, looking to lose fat, and then that doesn't happen because they don't realize that they're subtly eating just 200 or 300 calories more per day, and then they quit because they go, it's not working for me. I think there's, and that's always going to fuel whether you continue to do something. So that's huge. And I also think that like on a physical component, there's the potential for like repetitive stress imbalances and injury. Right? Like how many people don't know how to jog or run because there's a lot of nuance to it. And so jogging and running can be really very hard on your joints from all the impact. Right.
They talk about cardiovascular and like athletes sometimes, or I've heard that they need to eat more protein because they're degrading their body so much from all of the work and all the stress that they actually need to rebuild their tissues because they're being so broken down from the long-term stress and the actual physical component of just wearing your body down over and over again.
And that leads me to another point of just like, we only have so many hours in the day. And as we go further into like adulthood and we're adulting harder and harder, like our time becomes more and more valuable. And so you might only have a few hours a week total for exercise.
Yeah.
And it's a low barrier of entry to just hop on a treadmill. And that's a fine start. And for all the reasons we just mentioned earlier, like you're going to be better off in general.
There's nothing bad that's going to come of it, most likely.
When I see people who have been going to spin class 4 days a week,
that's the cycling
for
classes
20 years,
I've seen
or they go and they run 100 miles a week. It's like, yes, listen, cardiovascularly, they're very healthy. Like
their heart and their lungs, down to their inside, oxygen delivery and all that.
Yeah,
but their knees are
you have them try to do a proper squat and it throws their back out, their knees buckle in, and they got pain everywhere. It's like, so it can get to this tipping point where you're so funneled into this like monodirectional movement pattern that you're only developing
repetitive stress
skill in this very, very narrow corridor that does not translate into other areas of life. And so if you wanted to all of a sudden adopt strength training after 20 years of spinning, it's going to be a huge learning curve and adjustment period as your body is going to probably struggle physically to, figure out how to move that way more dynamically.
And especially with jogging and running, there is absolutely form and ways that it can be very negatively impactful for like your joints. Just simply put, if you don't run with good form. And I think running is the immediate go-to for getting exercise or cardio.
Low barrier of entry.
Low barrier of entry, which is a benefit, right? So that's the other angle is that it's free, it's accessible, everybody can just go outside and do a jog. So it's very available, it doesn't cost anything. So that's all beneficial. But at the same time, when, you know, if I see somebody with a really bad like running posture and I can tell they're just putting in the miles, I'm kind of like, oh, it makes me grimace. And I think there are many people that are like, well, I want to get in shape or I want to lose weight. And so I'll just go, I've never done any other exercise, but I'll just go jog 3 miles 5 times a week or 4 times a week or 1 mile 5 times a week. And that, again, they're getting the systemic benefits, but their structure is getting damaged.
Yeah. So there's like,
there's just,
like
especially with
systemic benefits, and there's also structural, you know, risk where most folks that we see, like, okay, so, you know, maybe you're kind of duck-toed, and, you know, maybe there's some hip imbalances where maybe one hip's hiked because you kind of sit like on one side.
I'm a living proof. So my left ankle is more collapsed. I have generally flat feet, but my left ankle is more pronated or more collapsed. And it's just to a fairly severe degree compared to my right. And I know that when I jog or run, especially when it's new or if I don't warm up well enough, but that fundamentally with the impact and the strike, that pronation or that extra degree of collapse cascades up. My whole lower leg gets all jacked up. My anterior tibialis, the muscle in the front of the shin, which helps to support that position, the arch. So
next thing you know, your hips pinching.
It's this whole thing.
Your QLs are all
I'm not saying
cramped.
that I could never overcome that, but if I were to just like go and do 2 or 3 miles on a jog, which I know I could do,
right,
even if I'm not used to it, it actually causes me like pain.
So, you know, so it's like, that's why I think to distill this all down, everyone should be proficient at some degree of running, I believe, but you also need to make sure that you if you do have arch or collapsed arches, for example, then, you know, address it and look down at your feet when you run. I mean, are your toes splayed out?
I mean, that's the thing is I try, but I can't help it. I'll try to evert my foot, and it's just that impact throws it into that deeper pronation.
Have you tried orthopedics?
A little bit, but but they just fundamentally, it's so deeply structural. I think it will have to come down to more me taking time to strengthen that joint in those positions with like calf raises and more like specific rehabilitative stuff, so that when I introduce the stress of the run, it can handle it. Versus right now, it's just so untrained that it just takes it out. So, you know, and there are low impacts. That's running. So like obviously cycling and rowing are going to be low to no impact in terms of like what we're talking about here. Swimming. And I think that doing cycling, even if it has, I've seen clients get jacked from it, it's still going to be better than nothing, right? So I don't want to throw out, well, repetitive stress sucks, isn't worth it. If your knees are bad and you can't run, rowing or swimming is going to be a great choice. And I think the systemic benefits and the survivability rate is still worth it. But it's just, I think, important to be aware of that certain activities that I think would fall under cardio could have some things to be aware of that you don't want to have happen.
Exactly. So don't just think it's going to be this save-all, catch-all thing, right? But
and then
get specific and you know, make sure that no matter what, you are doing something to try to spot and identify any asymmetries and try to shore those up before you start.
Yeah, and I think something that you named was like cardio addiction.
Yeah.
And I don't see it as much with weight training. I mean, I think body dysmorphia and our relationship to eating and exercise can always be skewed. There's always a potential to develop a negative relationship with those things because they're all related to potentially to how you view yourself and self-worth and self-image. But I do notice more that there is the potential for cardio addiction versus weight training addiction. So no doubt there are people that get addicted to the weight room, but I do think I've seen these people that are just like, I need to go on more runs. I need to get my run in today. I need to do 4 more miles. Whatever, because it's weight loss or because it's stress or, you know, these things.
Or I think that it's, you know, with cardio, it's very easy to measure. Okay, I ran 10 miles. It's super easy to just know. And so now we create these like baseline standards for ourselves. And then if we have a week where we can't live up to the arbitrary standard that we set for ourselves, we feel like we're failing somehow. And you see people like, oh, I only was able to run 20 miles last week instead of 30. It's like, that's insane. That's a lot of running.
It's a lot of running. And it's all relative. If you're adapted, you're used to running and you run 30 miles in a week. If you're training for a marathon or it's something you do, it's one thing. But I just wanted to touch on that there is always a potential for the mental emotional relationship to health activity, whether it's food or exercise, and that cardio is one of them that I think sometimes people can kind of attach onto in a negative way.
Totally. Yeah. And again, it's just that addiction to living, like reaching the standards that you've set for yourself that are probably arbitrary to begin with. And if you just got to ask yourself, well, what's the intention? If the intention is, no, I got to train for a marathon, and you're like in marathon training, then sure, maybe you do need to hit a certain number of miles every week or whatever.
Right.
But if it's just recreational and it's just because you want to be healthy, there's other ways to achieve that without just piling more and more cardio on. However, I think some really healthy ways to sneak it in and to keep yourself in a flow state are tying it to like a sport.
Yeah.
I did volleyball. Like literally about this time last year, I kind of got to that point where I'm like super busy with work and I've always been really good with exercise as far as just like weightlifting, but besides walking the dogs a couple times a day, I wasn't really doing any cardio. Nothing.
Exactly. Yeah.
My cardio was leg day. It was like squatting.
That is me right now.
Like deadlifts.
All things admitted.
Heart's pounding. And I'm like, okay, that's not good. I got to figure something out. And so my niece came into town. She's really serious into volleyball. And we went to the beach and we played volleyball like over Christmas last year. And I was like, I love this. Yeah. It's so much fun.
So much fun.
So I went and joined a volleyball league. And literally from January of 2023 straight through until the end of September, I played at least once a week, but it always ended up being like 3 hours every time you'd go.
Yeah.
But then I started going like twice a week. And I was loving it. And I mean, it's the epitome of interval training. I'm like, go for a minute or so while the ball's being volleyed back and forth. And then the point we get scored, you'd have about a minute break while everybody reset, and then you'd go again. And it was great. And I'm like in my mind thinking, I'm getting my cardio in, I'm learning a skill, I'm playing volleyball, I'm socializing. It's checking all the boxes.
Yeah, so much overall benefit to the organism.
Totally.
Right? Mental, emotional, social, just all the good things.
All the good things. And then, I was a knucklehead and wasn't doing mobility, talking about kind of just like wear and tear.
Yep.
And I ended up getting really gnarly tendonitis in my knee that now we're recording this in January. I'm finally not sore to the touch.
Yeah. Tendonitis of any tendon is the worst. That's golfer's elbow, tennis elbow. It is so tenacious. It just doesn't want to go away. The things that help it reactivate it, it's terrible. But I think the main takeaway though is like if you can get movement in through a form of play or a more enjoyable avenue, the difference between doing a bike at LA Fitness in a row of bikes looking at a sweaty back of the person in front of you, or getting on a bike and actually like riding around outside, smelling the air and feeling the sun on your skin and looking at neighborhoods and seeing cool houses and that kind of a thing is going to be so much more enjoyable. It's going to make that boring, repetitive, uncomfortable state a little more acceptable to deal with.
Definitely.
Right, and then you take it up a notch further if you have some type of game you can play. Again, like I like to spin my dragon staff. I acquire new skills. It's fun. It's kind of like dancing. I'm listening to music, and no doubt I'll get all nice and sweaty if I get into a good little pocket.
So it's like, don't get hung up on it has to be running or it has to be cycling or it has to be swimming. Like it can literally just be signing up for a kickball league.
Yeah.
Deciding you're going to like go to a dance class a couple times a week.
Exactly. Like partner dancing, hip hop class. Yeah. If you have a pet, like a dog, it's like there's the opportunity to run and go to the dog park and how, do you stand there and throw the ball, or maybe you like jog over here and just include some more movement intentionally in a thing that is going to be fun. So,
and that all implies time. And so I think that when we look at like the average person, the average case study, typically the big issue is I work a lot, I might have a family, it's just difficult. I might only have 30 minutes to work out 3 times a week. And for those folks, then I would say combining your weight training with your cardio and just putting it into circuits is going to check both of those boxes. You're moving dynamically, you're pushing weight, albeit sub-maximal. It's not going to like progress you to the point to where you're going to get super strong or super jacked, but it's going to establish a really good baseline of just good, healthy movement standards. But if you put it in a little bit of a circuit, then that's going to get your heart rate going. You're going to get breathy, and you're going to get all the same benefits of any other sort of form of cardio. And that would be a great starting point, I think, for most folks, is like something as simple as like lunges, push-ups, and like a suspension trainer row or something in a circuit for
moving around,
3 or 4 rounds.
Bopping through.
You get some strength. You're doing the circuit training, so you're getting the cardio benefit.
Right.
And if time is the issue, which a lot of folks say that it is,
of course,
then that would be probably what I would recommend as
it's
a
good
starting
bang
point.
for your buck.
Yeah.
Kind of getting two birds with one stone, so to speak.
So Ethan, there's this thing called fasted cardio.
Oh, yes.
Have you heard of it?
I have heard of it, actually.
I
do it every morning.
So
no, but it is a thing that you hear quite a bit, and I dove into it a little bit. And so Andrew Huberman is pretty well known these days, and I've heard him talk about the benefits of fasted cardio. And he obviously, from a scientific exercise physiology bio standpoint, knows his stuff. So if he's in some capacity saying that there is a difference between non-fasted cardio and fasted cardio, I'm going to take his word for it. That being said, based on everything I looked at and all the studies, is that the marginal difference is just that, marginal. Mm-hmm. Right? So fasted cardio is the implication that you are going to engage in the activity as previously defined with a low level of blood sugar or not having eaten for a prolonged period of time, so that your blood levels of glucose are low. And the general idea is that since aerobic exercise utilizes fat as a primary energy source, that if your blood sugar is already low, you don't have some bread or rice or a banana floating through your system, that when you engage in the activity, your body will pull off of your stored fat extra hard or extra much, is fundamentally what I think most people talk about and why they consider doing it.
Right. So this is really popular amongst bodybuilders.
Yep.
And so if you are a bodybuilder, that probably also implies you're tracking every single macronutrient you eat.
Absolutely.
Proteins, carbs, and fats. And so if you know beyond, without a shred of doubt that you are in fact in a calorie deficit, and then on top of that, you want to throw in fasted cardio to just throw a little icing on the cake, that applies. However, don't just think that there's something magical about it.
Again,
because yes, maybe in that moment you pulled fat from your fat cells because
a little more efficiently.
There's no blood glucose, but then you go and overeat by 30% for the rest of the day. You're still going to be hypocaloric and you're going to gain body fat. So don't think that there's anything magical about fasted cardio unless you already know that you're in a deficit. And then it would just beg the question, well, what's more comfortable, doing that hour of fasted cardio to burn that extra 300 calories or just eating 300 calories less throughout the day? Because they would kind of both achieve the same composition effect, but that's different than sort of like the health benefits that we were talking about.
And it's almost always done in the morning when you wake up. Like most people, unless you're doing intermittent fasting, you haven't eaten into a later part of your day. It almost always implies doing it first thing in the morning, which isn't always going to be available to people. There is also just the research is really mixed on whether it actually has any type of substantial effect on increasing your fat loss. And sometimes it actually has a higher increase of cortisol release because you're hungry or your blood sugar's low and your body's going under stress. It has to go do a bunch of stuff in a kind of a fasted state. So I do think that there probably are other benefits in terms of hormones and other things that are potentially available. So I'm not saying it's a complete quagmire bullshit idea to do, but I think that the primary idea of it is going to increase the rate of fat loss versus just doing the same amount of cardio in a different part of the day when you're not fasted is kind of a wash. It's just kind of a wash. And I think that doing the cardio is doing the cardio, and that the benefits of doing cardio, whether you're fasted or not, is what's important and should be looked at. And that the marginal potential differences of doing it fasted aren't necessarily worth the stress of getting up an hour earlier, doing all these other things. It's like, just get the cardio in and get the benefits. And like, unless you're a bodybuilder
but even then, it's like if you're gonna do, let's just say 30 minutes of cardio, which probably burns 200 calories, let's just say, 200 or 300 calories. if you do 30 minutes with an empty stomach in the morning, or you do 30 minutes at the end of your day after you've eaten all day, it's still burning the same 200 calories.
Yes.
Right? So whether you get those calories in before your cardio or whether you get them in after your cardio, it's not, that's sort of where I kind of go, it just doesn't pan out. You know, when you really think about it, it doesn't freaking matter.
It's just not.
And whatever you do, most importantly, you got to be able to stick with it. And if that just adds another layer of complexity to your day and another
You're getting up when it's
hurdle.
dark now.
Yeah,
To get this hour of
just forget
cardio
it.
in before the rest of your day starts, before you start eating, because once you start work, you can't eat for a long time, so you have to eat breakfast in order to get it in before breakfast. It's just
it's
just a rabbit hole.
Yeah, don't do it. Anyway, so last thing we'll do here is we'll go into our 1 to 10 rating.
1 to 10 rating.
Well, that I think is pretty clear, but what do you think, Ethan?
I'm gonna give it like, I think, is it worth it?
How about this? Let's do this. Let's go there. Let's break it down a little bit. So we'll go 1 to 10, maybe through 3 different types of cardio. Okay.
Okay, that might make it a little easier. I mean, it was going to be a very high number.
Steady state cardio, running, cycling, that kind of thing.
8.5.
Okay. Why?
Because there are countless documentable benefits from your state of mind, your mood. It's accessible, it's free, the survivability rate, even with the potential for structural stuff and it being hard on your joints. The fact that it's accessible to anyone and the amount of benefit that it has for the quality of your life is just exceedingly high and been documented. So it's really hard to put a shadow on it.
Circuit training with weights, assuming like weights, almost like what you'd imagine, like in a
I would probably
boot camp
now
or something.
bring that to like a 9.
Okay.
Give it a 0.5 more because you get a little more muscular activation to what you said. Again, generally free, might be a little harder to do. You might have to have a gym membership now or get some equipment at home or at least know how to do a squat. We're talking about a little more education.
A little more skill factor.
So, a little more of a barrier of entry, but you're getting a little more bang for your buck. So I'll give it the 9. I'll jump it up 1.
And then lastly, sports/play.
I'm going to have to give that like a 10. Right. I just can't not give it a 10 to the very points that as a overall organism, to talk about wellness, including fitness, health, social dynamic, that joining a volleyball team or going to a flow arch jam or, kickball or even going to a dog park and playing with your dog. It's like you're getting social components, which is going to help with your mood and depression and community, right? You're getting all of the health benefits. You're learning new skills. You're creating more neural connections in your brain from skill acquisition. And so I think play is, I'm just such a big proponent of play. I can talk about play. We'll have to have an whole episode about play.
We should.
Play is just so essential. Basically show that every mammal, once the hierarchy of needs are met, all engage in play. And
universal language.
That it's an essential component of our development, just like eating and having warm shelter is. It's just that we don't get to it until all other stuff is done.
Right.
So
even mammals in dire situations still engage in some form of another.
The play is the best. Yeah. So the little stepping stone. What about you? Steady state.
I agree. I'm with you on play for sure. Right. 10 out of 10. Everyone should be in some sort of communal activity. Engage with other people. It just teaches you so many things, like how to be a good leader, how to be a good follower, when to lead, when to follow, how to engage in social dynamics better. There's so many benefits beyond just the health factors. There's so much cognitive benefit to sports and play. 10 out of 10. Agree with you on that. Circuit training, what we would call like HIIT, maybe high intensity or even low intensity for that matter, but just any sort of interval training or circuit training,
a little boot camp
with weights. Yeah.
P90X.
Yeah. Careful.
Yes.
Yeah. Figure out where you're at, but yes. But I would say like 9 out of 10, like you get 80%, 70% of the benefits of just pure strength training. You get all the benefits of conditioning, but you can condense it into just one tight 20 to 30 minute workout 3 times a week. Boom.
Yeah.
You're right. You're in the 90th percentile now. Congrats. Where I would diverge from you a little bit is just steady state. I would actually probably maybe lean more towards like a 7 on that.
Okay.
Just because I just feel there's so many better ways to do it.
Right.
And the benefits are hyper local in that modality. There's no skill transfer necessarily. So if I go and do, let's just say 30 minutes of a HIIT